Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football Dill. As Michigan fans ourselves, the boys are fired up to see what Sherrone Moore, this Michigan program, will be doing in the transfer portal. And if any indication of how we close the 2025 class out on the recruiting trail is any indication of what we're going to do in the transfer portal, we're going to have a lot to talk about over the next couple of weeks. And look, Dill, Sherrone Moore, this Michigan staff, wasting no time. We already got to talk about some visitors that are scheduling some visits to this Michigan program over the next couple of days and weeks. Fired up to get into it. We're also going to, for lack of better words, like play a game in terms of what wide receivers we want to see come to Michigan. We're going to give our two favorite wide receivers. If we were just a kid in a candy store and we could take any wide receiver off the shelf, who would it be? And then I think more importantly, some of those sleeper wide receivers too. Dill, Michigan's probably main target, main goal in the transfer portal is to go grab some wide receivers to surround a guy like Bryce Underwood with all the weapons he needs. It's a damn good year to want a wide receiver because that is an absolutely loaded position in the portal. Fired up to get into it. Now, before we do, and as always, one, to the Michigan fans, let it fly with the wide receivers. Let it fly with the thoughts on some of these portal targets that have emerged for Michigan. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Going to be a lot to talk about over the next couple of weeks. Still, let's start with Keyshawn Silver. I think one of the flashier names in the transfer portal. What is it? It's Michigan, it's USC, it's Florida, and it's Miami. Those are the top four that he's put out. He's scheduling visits to each of those programs. We know interior defensive line is certainly going to be a position Michigan addresses. Dill, Keyshawn Silver, how do we feel about him?
I mean, the issue is there's certainly some traits there, but there's been really no production at the college level. I think you go look at that Kentucky film, even as late as last year, really wasn't playing dominant ball from my standpoint, if you will. And when you're that old, it's hard to really convince me and get excited about like the traits because at some point you got to
Yeah,
pull that
fair.
one in. I just don't think that's what you've seen from him through his college career.
Little background on Keyshawn Silver was a five-star prospect in the 2021 class, first 2 years at UNC, last 2 years at Kentucky. He's going into his fifth year of college football. Dill, look, if Michigan ends up landing him, I'm going to be fired up about it because you look at Lou Esposito and what Michigan has done, maximizing guys on the defensive line, that certainly excites me because if you maximize this kid at 6'4", 335, carries the weight well, 7'1" wingspan, this could be an all Big Ten caliber defensive lineman. But I'm kind of with you. One, is he going to be worth, the time and resources? Like we all know Miami, USC, Florida, like they're going to be competitive here. He's going to be hard to get. Is he worth it? And I'm kind of with you. I'm not saying I don't like it, but when you're a fifth-year senior and we're still talking about what you can be, that concerns me. Now, if this kid was a going into his second year of college football, like sign me up for it. But when we're talking about a fifth-year guy and we're still talking about the traits with little production on the football field, that's when I start getting a little bit concerned. We'll see how
And
it
at
plays
that
out.
point, my preference, if you're going to go for the older guys, like go pick a kid out of Western Michigan or something who's played really good football, as opposed to a guy who I still think you're betting on the traits with him because the football hasn't been great. And I look at like a guy like
Yeah.
CJ West for Indiana this year. He's playing really good football. Not the traitsiest guy in the world, but a darn good football player. My opinion for the defensive line from Michigan, if you're going to pick traits, pick a young guy. If you're going to pick for like an older guy, just pick production, whether it was at a high level
Agreed.
school or mid major, whatever you
Very,
want to call
and you also have the conversation of like bang for your buck. Like, Miami, Florida, USC are going to be very competitive with the NIL packages. Is he worth what we're going to have to kind of pay for him, shell out for him to come to Michigan? That's probably my biggest concern. Again, I don't hate it. I don't probably love it either. Dill, moving on. I think this kid, so you shared it. We're getting ready to record. I had no clue Bryce Pollock was coming on a visit. Okay, I got to watch a little bit more of him. He started every single game at Mississippi State in the SEC this year as a second-year player. He started a few games as a true freshman as well in 2023. Go dig into the athlete real quick. 6'1", a buck 90, two-way player at the high school ranks, track guy with some nice 100-meter times. And then you take a look at what he's done the first 2 years, and there's a lot to like. Has faced 45 targets in 2024, only gave up 25 catches, battle tested, SEC cornerback. Dill, Michigan needs some cornerbacks. I feel pretty dang good about a guy like Bryce Pollock because that ceiling, it's one of those guys where you know what you're getting. You're getting a very solid power four guy that proved himself in the SEC with the potential of him only going into year 3 with potentially getting, an all conference cornerback as well in Bryce Pollock.
Yeah, and I like the idea of refilling that cornerback room up because I still look at Zeke Berry as a guy I think you like playing the nickel role
Yes,
better than
agreed.
that boundary corner. I think he played really good at the boundary corner, frankly. But I look, his physical kind of makeup, if you will, screams nickel cornerback.
Yes.
You see how many guys they're going to lose. They took a lot of older corners last year, guys like Amir Hall, Ricky Johnson, those type of guys. Like Amir Hall
See,
gone.
I,
I
I
think
don't
he
think
moved.
I'd hate going in. I got a name that I'll kind of float by you real quick. Dante Belfer, spending his time at Charlotte, that Biff Poggi connection, veteran guy that's going into his 5th year of college football, was a blue chip recruit coming out of high school, didn't really crack the field at North Carolina, goes to Charlotte, has played over 1,400 snaps over the last 2 seasons, has put together some really, really good years at Charlotte. This is kind of what I lean towards because you look at ceiling guys, we got a lot of them. I mean, talk about Jair Hill, Josiah Edmond, Shamari Earls coming in. I feel really good about the young talent and what the ceiling can be. I would like a guy that kind of like Amir Hall or Josh Wallace. We're probably not going to be top 100 NFL draft picks, but probably give you some damn reliable reps at the boundary cornerback spot. I would certainly take Bryce Pollock, don't get me wrong, but a guy like Dante Belfort, that's a guy I'm looking at and saying I'm intrigued from a Michigan standpoint.
Yeah, but I don't mind getting guys in the room and letting Lamar Morgan be able to work with them for a little bit more than
100%
just
agree.
1 year. Because I do think, like, again, then you get into rolling it too quickly and you don't give your young guys as much. I don't think as much of a chance to kind of develop if it's 1 year out kind of thing. I do like the idea of having guys in the room for a couple of years. I do think that fosters a better defense, especially in the secondary aspect. Like looking at what Michigan was in 2023 and how those guys had played together for forever and were so good and so dialed in. I don't mind the idea of having some like guys build some experience through the program.
Yeah, I mean, the only question with Bryce Pollock is he's going into year 3. There's a very good chance he might be 3 and going to the NFL draft. And that would be a good case
Not a bad
scenario for
problem
Michigan. Yeah, and that's certainly not a bad problem.
because
We'll
that
see where
means he
Michigan.
probably played better than like a Dante Belfort type guy. So,
And I
but
wouldn't be surprised if Michigan waits till after get a feel for guys like Shamari Earls and guys like Josiah Edmond. Like, are we going to be able to rely on those guys in 2025? And then maybe make a move like a Josh Wallace or Amir Hall maybe later in the process. Last one that it will be visiting Michigan, Dill, kind of feels like Josh Preeb from last year. And we're going to go to Josh Thompson, interior offensive lineman for Northwestern. You buzz Josh Thompson. Dill, one of the things that stood out to me, 1,400 snaps over the last 2 years, has started a lot of football in the Big Ten, so we're getting a known commodity. Go check out how he did against Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant this year. Impressive. Look, if you can block up Mason Graham and Kenny Grant, you're going to have a pretty easy time blocking up most of the defensive linemen that you're going to see every Saturday in a college football season. To me, I just quick little look at how he did against Michigan. I liked what I saw. I like Josh Thompson a lot as well.
I would be totally on board with this. Like again, I don't want to see Michigan take 3 or 4 guys on the offensive line, but an experienced guard and experienced tackle. I think both those would make some
See,
sense for Michigan.
I feel more strongly about getting an experienced tackle, especially with Andrew Gentry hitting the portal, than I do on the inside. I look at the inside of the offensive line and say I feel kind of good. Giovanni Lahadi played his best football down the stretch. I would presume he's going to be quite a good football player for us in 2025. Talk about guys like Fody, Jake Winera. I look at it and say I would rather get a bona fide starting caliber tackle than focus on the inside of the offensive line. But I'll never say no to a starting caliber offensive lineman in the portal because there's just not many of them. And if Sherrone Moore knows this guy, like we've seen him play with his own 2 eyes. I trust Sherrone Moore with the evaluation. Dill, let's get into, at least in my opinion as a Michigan fan here, the more exciting conversation. You're a kid in the candy shop. You get a chance to take whatever wide receiver you want and put them in the Michigan offense in 2025. They have to be in the transfer portal. Where are you going?
It's got to be Casey Concepcion. You go back to the
I like it.
2022 film for that NC State team. I don't think you've seen a more dominant true freshman almost at the wide
2023,
receiver.
2023, right? True freshman year.
Yeah,
You getting your years mixed up. I
2023.
got you.
But like that was dominant football for a freshman wide
Yeah, he's
receiver.
sick.
And just the amount of versatility he has, can carry the ball, can catch screens, can get down the field and track the ball deep. Like he's just a really complete player. NC State kind of blew up in 2024. I don't totally know what happened. Still can't wrap my mind around why
I know
they were
what
so
happened. NC State had to start a true freshman quarterback in case Concepcion wasn't getting the ball like he did in 2023. That's what
But
happened.
he's a monster. He's a monster. If
Monster.
they can get him, I do think he's a guy who lets you open your offense up a little bit because he is so versatile and can do basically anything on the field.
The versatility, like there are some flashy wide receivers that, like a Nick Anderson, but I feel like they're a little bit one dimensional, and they might be, unless it's working vertically down the field. Nick Anderson to me is hard to get involved in the offense. Now, taking a Casey Concepcion and then supplementing it with a guy like Nick Anderson who can work vertically down the field, that's probably the ideal scenario. But if it was one, it's hard to argue with Casey Concepcion because he's so easy to get involved. Like there's not a route he can't run. There's not a thing he can't do. You can get him involved with screens, end arounds, and he's gonna make potentially Bryce Underwood's life a lot easier in 2025. Now I'm gonna go to a similar guy. I'm gonna go to Barian Brown. Michigan needs more juice on the offense side of the football. We need more pass catchers who, when they have the football in their hands, the opposing defense has to hold their breath. Barian Brown's that guy. He's a 10.49 out of in the 100-meter out of high school, and he plays that fast on the football field. That's kind of what I'm trying to get at. Sometimes we get really wrapped up in track times, and then they just don't play nearly as fast in the football field. Barian Brown's that guy. Easy to get incorporated, kind of like Casey Concepcion, really can stretch the field vertically with his speed. I think this kid would be dynamite in this Michigan offense and really open it up from a wide variety of ways. Dill, let's kick it to a sleeper. So a guy that maybe nobody's really talking about, but you think would add out value to this Michigan offense.
Going Logan Loya from UCLA. I think I look at a guy who has dealt with a lot of like kind of chaos around him, especially at that quarterback spot. Has been a very consistent producer in my mind. His numbers probably don't jump off the page to you, but again,
No.
they haven't had any stability in that offense while he's kind of been the guy in that room. I look at very experienced, very crafty veteran, especially working that slot. Guy's just open a lot, I feel like. And he was open a lot this year, even though they didn't really have a ton of other weapons around him. I think he's a guy, like you talk about making Bryce Underwood's life easier.
Yes.
Michigan didn't have guys who are getting open this year. I'll get on the quarterbacks as much as the next guy because I don't think Michigan quarterback play was remotely good enough, obviously. But I also don't think the wide receiver play was good enough. I don't think they had guys who could create a ton of separation on their own. Logan Loya is a guy who just is open, I feel like.
Super crafty too. Well, like whether it's man coverage and we got to just create some separation, or whether you see in zone and say, all right, I got to sit it down in a throwing window. He's a quarterback's best friend. Talk about me. I think you hit the nail on the head. Taking or making Bryce Underwood's job easier. Give him a 6-year senior that gets open. He probably won't stretch the field like some of the other guys we've talked about, but he's a guy that's going to be open and create space. And that's something that Michigan just did not have in this offense. I also put that on Kirk Campbell. Dill, the name I'm going to go to, familiar name for the Michigan fans who follow the recruiting trail, Nitro Tuggle. If you want to know if a transfer portal player is good or not, go check out how the fan base, go check out the Georgia fans' reactions about Nitro Tuggle hitting the portal. They're devastated because this kid is super talented, just didn't really get utilized in this Georgia offense. Michigan turned up the heat on him late in the process in the 2024 class. The down part is he's an unproven commodity. We don't really know what he is at the Power 4 level. Didn't produce a ton at Georgia as a true freshman.
When he got on the field, though, he played good football. I'm stunned watching these Georgia wide receivers. Ball is hitting off their face mask, not catching anything, just playing really poorly. I'm stunned they didn't get him on the field more because at the end of the day, I think that Georgia wideout room, like I don't
sucked.
know. They dropped a lot of
Stinks.
passes.
Yes. Now Georgia fans are all over Twitter asking for Nacho Tuggle to play more, and he didn't. Hits the portal. Michigan's already got a relationship there. In my opinion, go make it happen. Again,
And Michigan's
unproven.
now got the infrastructure, I think, to attract him to Michigan. That's the one thing. Like, if I'm Nitro Tuggle coming out of like high school, I'm looking, ooh, that is a snooze fest of an offense. I don't know if that's where I want to play. That's
Yeah,
why I think this offensive coordinator position needs to kind of get figured out, or hopefully
yeah,
gets figured out soon. Because again,
yeah.
there's so many good wide receivers. They get the right guy in there, and Bryce Underwood's obviously coming in. I think you bring a level of excitement that you can put your name in the running for this type of player.
Agreed. I think it's hard to recruit these guys right now with no offensive coordinator. Once we get one, we'll kind of get a better feel. It'll also give us a better feel what kind of wide receivers we want in the offense, anyways. So we'll continue to update the list. Every time I look at my phone, there's new portal entry. So there's gonna be a lot to talk about. You
It's
kind of
very
feel like
distracting at work.
that is very, very true. We'll have a lot to talk about. Again, appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.